Mr. Ganesh Rajaram.
Mr. Speaker, sir, thank you for the opportunity to speak in the budget debate. Mr. Speaker, in recent months, and even in this House yesterday and today, there has been a fair bit of debate and discussion on the class divide in Singapore. I am very pleased that this year's budget speech by Finance Minister Heng Swee Keat aims at narrowing this divide. From supporting needy individuals, seniors and families, to encouraging the spirit of giving among Singaporeans, this budget goes a long way towards enabling social mobility, which would narrow the class divide. However, Mr. Speaker, sir, the government alone cannot bridge this gap. In an Institute of Policy Studies study on social capital in Singapore, conducted in December of last year, it was found that the most acute social divisions in Singapore were now based on class and not on race or religion. National University of Singapore sociologist Vincent Chua, one of the study's researchers, noted that while Singapore has done, and I quote, a pretty good job of fostering multiculturalism and mixing between ethnic groups, the next step now is to increase efforts to increasing mixing between classes. Mr. Speaker, sir, in my speech today, I'd like to focus on the class divide and the roles that we Singaporeans can play in narrowing this gap. Inequality is not a new phenomenon, nor is it unique to Singapore. However, I would like to suggest that the country today is much better equipped to deal with this division than ever before. As PM Lee has pointed out just earlier this month, there is a concerted and coordinated effort by the government to tackle the challenges of income inequality, social mobility, and social integration together. The government has intervened to help those who are less well off in the areas of home ownership, healthcare, and education, as well as means-tested assistance schemes for Singaporeans from lower-income households. Programs such as Workfare, the Progressive Wage Model, and self-help groups such as Mendaki, SINDA, and CDAC also provide support through a variety of schemes, from financial assistance to learning enhancement programs. But still, many Singaporeans look to the government to resolve this class divide. A legacy, perhaps, of a time not so long ago when we looked to the government's lead to transform mudflats into a metropolis. While there is trust between the government and its people, there is also concern that, as the Straits Times opinion editor Chua Mi-hung noted in a recent column, and I quote, today's citizens may be expecting too much of their leaders, thinking back to the pioneering generation. In much of the discussion on inequality and the class division, many experts and Singaporeans have noted that the government would need to do more to address inequality, which left unchecked would pose a serious threat to the country's social cohesion. There was markedly less chatter about what Singaporeans ourselves can do to address this divide. Mr. Speaker, sir, governments around the world strive for income growth and social mobility because these are two key pillars of a thriving, progressive society. High social mobility in any country is influenced by structural as well as individual factors. The government is already intervening more aggressively in structural and systemic policies. But what can Singaporeans, what can we do to address the individual factors? I am reminded of the words that we readily recite every morning in the schools, and once a year, in the 9th of August, we each say hand on heart that we, the citizens of Singapore, pledge ourselves as one united people, regardless of race, language, or religion, to build a democratic society based on justice and equality so as to achieve happiness, prosperity, and progress for our nation. The emphasis is on we. We, the citizens of Singapore, pledge to build a society. For as good as our government may be, a community can achieve progress only if we acknowledge that change will come when we take ownership and make a collective effort to address inequality. And I would like to suggest that we begin where it always starts, at home. Mr. Speaker, sir, Singapore has had an amazing transformation since our founding as a nation in 1965. And as the country progressed, so did its people. Social mobility matched economic growth as Singapore and Singaporeans worked hard to build their country and their lives. We have many inspiring stories of Singaporeans who have become shining examples of what it would take to succeed in spite of humble beginnings. Our president, Madam Halima Yaakob, the former Speaker of this House, is one clear example. Her work ethic, resilience, and consistent concern for the less privileged served as a benchmark for many of us in this House and an inspiration for every child who dreams of becoming President of Singapore. What has moved many Singaporeans, in particular, is the credit that Madam President gives to her mother for the person she is today. There has been much written about how parenting styles influence a child's development and social mobility. Some may refer to this as parenting with heart and backbone, while others may say that it is about building resilience through positive psychology. It's really learning about how to get up when you fall or to keep your chin up in times of adversity. Many in this House might be familiar with this parenting style, but I wonder if conscious parenting, as I'd like to call it, is all that common in our very busy Singaporean households. As a business executive with no background in psychology or sociology, I can only share with you my personal encounter with this particular style of upbringing. It might help explain why a person from a minority community, from an impoverished upbringing, with no connections, and someone who's not a government scholar is in this chamber today. The class divide in the early days was stark. Home for me was a one-room rented flat until I was in primary 3. We were poor, but my parents kept us focused on the future. Study hard, they said. Do your best in whatever you do. What we lacked materially didn't seem too much because we always knew that things would get better if we worked hard enough at it. Education and meritocracy, even in the early days of nationhood, served families like us, people who didn't have very much, very well. I went to a mainstream primary school and never really felt out of place. Most of the kids were from the same neighborhood and we had similar backgrounds. I was an average student from an early age. I was far more interested in sports than I was in books. So I did well enough to get to a good secondary school, but not the school that my father wanted me to get into, the elite top boys school in Singapore. You see, Mr. Speaker, my father, who came from an even more impoverished background, had through merit made it to the top boys school for his secondary education, and he wanted his son to do the same. Of course, it didn't help that my elder sister had made it to the elite top girls' school. My father did not openly show his disappointment, though I could feel it. It was my first real lesson in failure. It inspired me to work hard, and I ended up in the elite junior college. The look on my father's face when he saw the metal badge on my shirt made the hard work worthwhile. But Mr. Speaker, sir, much like the findings in the IPS study, it was in this elite school that I first experienced the class divide. My first day at the JC was horrible. The majority of the kids came from the elite secondary schools, and many of them were reluctant to mix. Most knew one another because they moved in the same social circles and were family friends. They were driven to school, wore the latest sneakers, and carried the trendiest school bags. I went home after the first day of school and I told my father that maybe I had made the wrong choice and should have gone to a more mainstream junior college. My father said to me, I didn't bring you up to be a quitter. You got there on your own merit. You deserve a place in the school. Just work hard and the rest will take care of itself. So I stuck with the school, and over time I began to fit in. I still didn't get invited to the cool parties at the country clubs, but I made new friends, people from different races, different social backgrounds. Many of these I made through school sports. Mr. Speaker, sir, as Minister Grace Fu acknowledged in her reaction to the IPS study, sports is one of the best platforms for people of different backgrounds to integrate. And sports certainly played a key role in my integration in school when I faced a very stark class divide. Through sports, being on the school team and playing in national tournaments meant that where I came from, where I lived in, what shoes I wore did not matter. We were teammates. We trained together, we won and lost together. We became brothers both on and off the field. Some of my best friends today are friends I made playing sports. Mr. Speaker, sir, the early failures and challenges I faced as a child from a lower income family could have been devastating. What I am today is very much the result of how my parents brought me up. Their insistence that I face and overcome challenges, coupled with positive reinforcement and support at home, taught me again and again that the positivity, perseverance, and resilience would light the way to where I wanted to go. It's parenting with heart and backbone. My parents never once allowed me to feel like I don't belong among the smartest or richest kids in Singapore. Self-pity was not in their vocabulary. They encouraged me to dream big and to take ownership of what I wanted to do and where I wanted to go. My teachers never held my background against me, and the education system gave me the tools to succeed. Parents and teachers are a powerful combination, and they form the core of a special support group that is essential if we are to narrow the class divide. Mr. Speaker, sir, the starting point for Singaporeans is already a lot better than many others in the world. Many Singaporeans own their own homes, enjoy a high standard of education and healthcare, and go about their daily lives in a safe and secure environment. Yes, there is income inequality, and there always will be. But the government has taken the lead in addressing these issues with policies and assistance at every level and touchpoint. We have a meritocratic system that offers multiple pathways to social mobility. At the end of the day, bridging a class divide can only truly happen if Singaporeans work together to ensure that every single child from a low-income family is equipped with the perseverance, confidence, and resilience to succeed. At the same time, we must also create more opportunities for children of all income backgrounds to mingle and build lasting friendships, encouraging greater participation in team sports and team-building activities would help engender a sense of community and help narrow the social division. Mr. Speaker, sir, in Tamil, please. சிங்கப்பூரில் வசதி உள்ளவர்கள், வசதி இல்லாதவர்கள் இடையே உள்ள இடைவெளி பற்றி நிறைய விவாதங்கள் நடைபெற்றுக் கொண்டிருக்கிறது. இவ்விடைவெளியை பற்றி நிறைய எதிர்மறை கருத்துக்கள் அரசாங்கத்தை பற்றி வந்துள்ளன. அரசாங்கம் போதுமான உதவி செய்யவில்லை என்பதே அவற்றின் சாராம்சம். உண்மை என்னவென்றால், இந்த நிலைமையை அரசாங்கத்தினால் மற்றும் சரி செய்ய முடியாது. அதற்கு நம்முடைய உழைப்பும் தேவை. நான் வசதியான குடும்பத்திலிருந்து வரவில்லை. நான் தற்பொழுது உங்கள் முன்னிலையில் நின்று பேசுவதற்கு காரணமே அரசாங்கத்தின் கொள்கைகள் தான். இதற்கு பெற்றோர்களாகிய நாமும் சமூகங்களும் சமுதாயங்களும் நம் இளைஞர்களுக்கு ஊக்குவித்து அரசாங்கம் வழங்கும் திட்டங்களில் அவர்கள் நம்பிக்கை கொள்ளச் செய்ய வேண்டும். அவர்களை மனிதாண்மையவர்களாகவும் அன்பானவர்களாகவும் மாற்ற வேண்டும். இப்படி வாழ்ந்தால் தம்மிடையே உள்ள இடைவெளி குறையும். அவர்கள் கண்ட கனவுகளும் படிப்படியாக நிறைவேறும். Mr. Speaker, sir, Singapore was built on the values and hard work of our fathers and mothers. In striving to narrow inequality and class divisions, we need an all-in whole of Singapore approach. Singaporeans expect much of our government in this pressing matter, and rightly so. But can we not also expect just as much, if not more, from our people? Building a society based on justice and equality to achieve happiness, prosperity, and progress for our nation will take time and involve more than just the leadership of the Singapore government. It will need the entire collective will of the citizens of Singapore with heart and backbone. Mr. Speaker, sir, I support the budget.
I'm sure we're all now very intrigued about which school you went to. But please Google outside of chambers.